Hello and welcome to Power to the People with me, Graeme Pryce. Today we are just 2 weeks into the new year. Just 2 weeks. Feels like a lot longer, doesn't it? I am working on some longer videos, but today I thought I'd just make a quick one and give you my opinions on two things that have stood out for me so far in 2025. I'm going to share a little story with you about something that happened a few days ago that I think makes kind of an interesting point. We'll get right on it after this. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to take a quick moment to say that my videos often get thousands more views than I have subscribers. That can only mean that there are people watching who aren't subscribed. That's a difficult thing to deal with. Just have a quick look and make sure you've subscribed and rang the bell. Join the Power to the People family, and whenever you're furious about the right-wing media bias, you can join me for a little bit of straight talking honesty about the bastards that write the headlines. Thank you. Now, of course, the majority of the news has been dominated since New Year by the world's richest fucking idiot. A man so stupid he would literally buy himself a social media network and then allow himself to be radicalised by his own algorithms. Apparently, he had a falling out with Nigel Farage and said he shouldn't be allowed to lead reform. Apparently he's fallen in love with Tommy Robinson now or something. This has caused something of a schism between raging, gammon-faced right-wing knobheads up and down the country. You see, they've got a huge thing for Elon Musk, but they also want to spend as much time as possible licking Nigel Farage every day. It's quite the dichotomy for them. I can't stand liars, but I also can't stand hypocrites. And if we can say one thing, it is that Space Karen has certainly exposed the hypocrisy of the right, hasn't he? Particularly the Brexiteers. You see, these dim-witted, low-IQ chuff nuggets have spent most of the last decade basically saying the same things over and over. They don't want to be ruled by anybody unelected. They don't like foreign immigrants. Britain is a sovereign nation and they're the real patriots. Everyone else is just a lefty-loving, freedom of speech denying, wokerati bastard who actually hates England and wants to replace everybody with one-legged trans lesbians for Africa. Strangely enough, they've either had something of an epiphany, or they never really understood what those words and phrases meant, or they're all fucking hypocrites. You see, last week an unelected person made quite a big statement on Twitter and they lapped it up like special needs kittens. A foreign immigrant, from Africa nonetheless, spoke up, and instead of checking the colour of his skin and making sure he didn't have a slightly Middle Eastern sounding name before they proceeded any further, they hung on every word. Yeah, these patriots, these people who love Britain so much that they were prepared to undergo 50 years waiting for the benefits of a no-deal Brexit, suddenly decided it was patriotic to agree with an absolute mentalist, Lord of the Hamlads, apartheid-loving, racist, transphobic fuckwit who publicly declared he thinks America should invade the UK and depose the Labour government. He even posted a little poll, which, obviously gave him the result he wanted, because anybody with any sense of normality and decency left Twitter months ago, and it's only him, the MAGA lot, millions of bots, loads of Russians, and all the right-wingiest of goblins that are still using it. Oh, and the Reform lot, of course, but it's basically become a giant Reform UK promotional site for them, hasn't it? So, of course, they're well into it. See, this is what Farage and Robinson and GBBs and 14 years of the Tories have done. These hypocritical brown-shirted wankshafts have been so indoctrinated and radicalised by continual right-wing bullshit that they actually think they want to be invaded. They've been so absolutely conditioned with culture wars and racist tropes repeated to them as if they're normal every single day that they look at a person who is literally threatening an actual invasion to the country they claim to love. And they don't just accept it, they actually invite it. They like it, even, because all they can concentrate on is the fact that Elon hates Labour and wants to attack Starmer. You know, the petition failed, didn't it? The riots failed. The farmers, when, nobody was quite angry enough about that, but they're determined that they're not going to accept that we've got a Labour government. They've successfully been convinced to ignore the evidence of their own ears and eyes, haven't they? Up is down and black is white. Fucking hypocrites. Imagine being so dumb and gullible that you reach the point where even when somebody suggests a foreign country invading the UK, is something that they should support, and they do, and even that isn't enough to convince them that these people are wrong'uns. I think these people would let Nigel Farage piss in the face and then try to pretend it tasted like lemonade. I really do. Fuck's sake. I said I had a story, didn't I? And it's not a very interesting one, but it did make me have a thought that I'd like to share. I won't say too much because some of my friends do watch my videos, but I saw a chap I've known for years a few days ago. I haven't spoken to him much in a long time, but we did used to get along. And he used to chat to me about how much he hated the Tories. Smart fella, looks after himself and works hard, and his kids are lovely and everything you'd expect. I mentioned that I'd had some toothache, shocker, and he immediately launched into a sermon about how if I wanted to see a dentist, I should get on a plane and fly to France and then black up my face and come back on a dinghy, because all the fucking immigrants are taking up all the dentists and they go straight to the front of the queue, lad. Fucking scum are everywhere, mate. I fucking hate them, lad. They're not everywhere. I've looked up the demographics of the area that I live in, and it's almost 90% white, so they're not everywhere. Now, I know some incoming people, especially if they're on dinghies, wouldn't be registered in those figures, but it wouldn't change it that much. There's not a lot of brown faces or hijabs where I live. I looked at how nobody in the room seemed particularly shocked at what he'd said, and then somebody else started to agree with him, and I decided it was a battle that I couldn't win. I swiftly changed the subject and thankfully managed to move on without having to express any of my opinions, but it stuck in my mind. That was a guy that I thought I had a lot in common with for a long time. I suppose I still do. I mean, hate the liars, not the lied to. I suppose I'll just have to hope that he sees through the bullshit in future one day, won't I? He's a smart lad, he probably will eventually. But it was a sobering experience. I was reminded how James O'Brien often says that he just holds up a mirror to the worst of the people that call in his show. But in this instance, I thought it was a bit like looking in the mirror and not recognising your own reflection. I would never have said what he did, and know what he said just isn't true. And I know he would never have said it 5 years ago. Something changed, as Jarvis Cocker once said. Yeah. Though having said that, I still feel like I'm 30, but when I look in the mirror, there is a baldy, middle-aged bloke with choppers like vandalised tombstones looking back at me, so maybe I shouldn't have been that surprised after all. Thank you for watching if you've gotten this far. I'm sorry it's just a short one, but I'm getting used to the new computer and I've been doing quite a lot of writing for future videos as well. The Elon Musk thing is just nuts, isn't it? And I haven't mentioned the Jess Phillips thing or the calls for an inquiry that we've already had that the Tories ignored once. Or my disgust at the Tories' blatant attempts to jump on Musk's anti-Labour bandwagon. Thought PMQs last Wednesday was quite good though, I'll say that much. It was a pleasure to see the whole of the House of Commons laughing at Nigel Farage, obviously. I thought Stephen Flynn represented himself quite well though, and it was a bit of a return to form. I always used to like Stephen Flynn, but I went off him a little bit in the few months before the election. Ed Davies was as charming and affable as always, especially after the pathetic display of Kemi Badenoch asking her 6 deliberately misleading and inflammatory questions. Again, I think it shows an Americanisation of our politics. The Tories aren't just opposing. They think being in opposition means attacking the government and trying to use any means possible to damage and demean them, even if that means having to lie about them, and even if that means making the country a worse place. That's not opposition, Kenny, you tit. Bear in mind, these are people that have a little wee with excitement whenever Churchill is mentioned. They would do well to remember that the government that Churchill led, the last time our national security was under threat from a foreign power with fascist leanings, was a unity government. It had MPs from Conservatives and Labour in it, and the Liberal Democrats, if I remember correctly. Anyway, that certainly isn't all I've got to say, but it is as much of what I've got to say as I'm going to say today. Ta-ra-la. Why are you licking the sofa? You've been there all that time and the most interesting thing you've done is lick the sofa. I don't know, Fluke. People will be asking for Annie back at this rate.